Yo, what is good, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the second part to pretty much this movie, What If Deku Was Tengen Uzui. Let's go! So, here we are. Yo, what's good? Anyway, I hope you guys do really enjoy this part. If you do, be sure to like, subscribe, all of that jazz. What else? If you do kind of like any of the music or anything like that, chuck it music down the description. Crown Fiend, absolute legendary boy. He helped me out with this, helped me out with the thumbnail, helped me out with scripting, helped me out trying to laughing my absolute head off while doing it. But yeah, anyway, I hope you guys do really enjoy this. Cool. All the links down in the description, music, all that. Anyway, remember, God is awesome. You guys are too. And let's just get straight into this epic what if. Let's go! After the whole stain incident goes down, they are all sent home as the internships are cut short due to Ida's injury. When Deku gets back to the dojo, all he hears when he opens the door is "Izuku-sama!" as he is slammed into by all three of his wives, them crying all over him, asking if he's okay, in which he tells them that he's fine and he's not hurt in any way, but Ida can't be a hero anymore due to him having a major spinal injury, which makes them all kind of sad. A few days pass as to let the students recover from their internships, and when the students do come back to school, All Might gets them to do a race. Deku wins the race. It's not even a competition. Like, man, it's just... Have you seen how fast Tengen is? Bro, he's there, and then he just appears somewhere else. Like, he's pretty much teleportation. Teleportation powers. That's like a second quirk. But anyway, pretty much Deku wins that. After this race, the rest of the kind of day passes as all the students come back to school the next day. After a few minutes, Aizawa walks in, standing at the front of the class. Still kind of bandaged up from being freaking yeeted by the Nomu, but he's fine. He's all good. Everything's fine. He's all good. But yeah. Anyway, as he's standing at the front of the class. Alright, I understand that everyone might still be a little down about Tenya Ida still being in hospital. But now is not the time for grief. That comes later. We have your final exams coming up in the next few weeks, so you need to prepare for that. You will have both a written test and a physical exam. And if you fail, he explains, you won't be going to the forage training camp during the summer break. Making the students begin to moan and kind of freak out, hearing the fact that firstly they have an exam straight after the internship, but also they won't be going to the forest training camp during the summer break, which kind of freaks them out. However, they hear a large kind of burst of laughter in the back of the room. These exams will be a breeze! If you need any help, I'm sure my wives would be happy to help you out. If you do, though, you must worship me, for I am Kami. You are trash. Izuku exclaims loudly as the rest of the class kind of rolls their eyes, while the bottom students kind of the class then begin to beg Momo and Kendo for help in the written exams, while Izuku kind of does his entire worship me. His wives are then worshipping him as he's awesome. Over the 2 or so weeks, some of the students come around to the dojo where they're taught written stuffs by the girls, while others come around to learn how to fight properly with hand-to-hand combat, etc., and sometimes with Kaguya as well, for the practical exam. The day of the final exams finally arrives, where all the students go and do the written part of the exam, where Izuku does relatively well, being the 4th smartest person in the class, so he does pretty well. Only being beaten by Momo, Kendo, and somebody else, who knows. I just put him as 4th place. They then go out to the training grounds in their hero costumes, where they see all the teachers lined up in front of them. I assume you all know what we'll be doing for the practical exam, Aizawa kinda says. Yeah! We're gonna be fighting robots! Mina and Kaminari shout and exclaim in excitement. That would be the case, they hear from Aizawa's scarf as Principal Nezu pops out, explaining further. In previous years, the students would be fighting against robots. However, due to the recent rise of villain attacks over the past few weeks, we have decided to change it up a bit. Instead of fighting robots, you'll be fighting against us, the teachers, freaking the students out. Oh yes, this is gonna be fun, Izuku exclaims. Nezu then explains further on how the students will be put in pairs fighting against one teacher. That is until one of the students speaks up. But there's only 19 students. Will one of us have to fight one-on-one against one of the teachers? Ha ha ha! I don't care who it is. I'll take anyone on alone, Izuku proclaims. Is that so? A loud voice booms as All Might lands in front of him. Today, young Uzui, I shall be your opponent, All Might explains. All the rest of the fights kind of happen with some people passing and some people failing. Most of the fights pretty much happen the exact same. With Momo being extremely confident, so that entire thing with her not being confident with Todoroki, that doesn't really happen. The plan with the catapult and the ice happens very quickly, as she has a plan immediately. Kami defeating Snipe with her illusions, and Kendo just beating up her opponent. I don't know who her opponent would be, but just beating up her opponent. And after this, it's finally time for Izuku to face off against the #1 hero, the symbol of peace, All Might. As the alarm sounds for them to go, Izuku blitzes to a building, jumping on top of the roof, dodging a large airwave or air blast, which would have blown him away if he stayed there, which was a gigantic punch from All Might. Not really sure if it was a warning shot or him just trying to get the edge on him. All Might then prepares to charge towards Izuku, or to where Izuku was, getting in a running stance when explosions detonate all around him, confusing him for a second as loud noises blast his ears, disorienting him for a few seconds before his legs are kicked out from underneath him. Izuku prepares to put the cuffs on him before All Might dodges out of the way. Izuku being able to follow his movements but not act on them. Before his body could react, he's hit in the side, sending Izuku flying into a building behind him. All Might gets up and walks towards the building and into the building before explosions go off all around him, blasting his eardrums, vibrating his body, and disrupting his senses for a few seconds, before feeling a slicing feeling across his legs, and then his arms, and then his body, his chest, the slices not being fatal, but enough to sting and to definitely put him down if done enough times. Before All Might could react, he then feels a solid kick to his left side, sending him flying out of the building and putting him on the ground for a few seconds. Clutching his side in pain, He then feels something wrap around his wrist as he sees Izuku there, one hand clutching his ribs kinda in pain, while his second hand holding one end of the cuffs, while the other end is attached to his wrist. "Izuku Uzui is the winner," a voice says over the intercoms, announcing Izuku's win, while the rest of the class is just standing there in complete shock, not really knowing what to say. The next day, they all arrive to class, some of them being sad and disappointed that they won't be able to go to the Forest Lodge, before Aizawa walks in and announces, "Before you all get sad and groupy, you'll all be going to the Forest Training Lodge. Those who failed will just have to do extra classes at night," making Aizawa kinda declaring this makes the students cheer and kinda get really excited. A few weeks or so passes as when the students go to the mall, Shigaraki doesn't come to see the students at the mall because he doesn't want to die. As everybody gets what they need, they get clothes, they get this, that. Izuku and his wives kind of just chill out and go to different shops. Izuku kind of just lets them do their thing while he just follows them. The day of them going to the forest training camp, the class gets on the bus, with Present Mike travelling with them as they are going to the forest training camp. Izuku sitting with his wives again, while the class talks about life. They then, after a few hours, arrive at a lookout, where everyone gets off the bus to stretch. Once everyone gets off, the Wild Pussycats then kind of reveal themselves as they are introduced to the class, which makes Izuku feel a bit strange. Like, why would they meet us here and not at base? Before seeing the Class 1B bus go past them. Before anyone could really react, Izuku grabs all three of his wives as he jumps off the cliff. Surprising the students and the Pussycats, Aizawa already kind of realizing that he has understood the meaning of the test and what's going to happen, so he's not really surprised from it. "Your training starts now," Aizawa explains as Pixie Bob slams her hands on the ground, forcing the students off the cliff as they slide down into the forest below. All of the students then land on the ground hard as they begin berating Izuku, asking why didn't he warn them kinda sooner, etc, etc, and kinda just explaining to them and kinda just yelling at him. "Why didn't you see that they were gonna do that earlier? Jeez, you're weird," Izuku explained, or kinda comments. Before anyone could complain further, Izuku hears something deeper in the forest in the trees, suddenly dashing into the forest and slicing one of the mud beast's heads off, surprising the students and Pixie Bob as they are warned by Aizawa. "If you don't make it in 4 hours to the training camp, you're making dinner yourselves." Hearing this, Izuku dashes further into the forest, his wives following close behind him. The others then getting the memo and going with them, destroying beasts along the way, not destroying all of them, but just any that are in their path, as they finally get to the forest training lodge. 3 hours and 47 minutes. Not bad, Aizawa comments, looking towards Izuku. Still not liking the kid's attitude, but he can definitely admire his strength and abilities. They then hear a voice from behind Aizawa. "Oh, so you're Izuku Uzui. You're very strong. Mate with me," as they see Pixie Bob there approaching Izuku rapidly. Before she could get any closer, Momo, Kami, and Kendo stand in front of him, blocking her path. Pixie Bob kinda getting the memo, not liking it, but understanding. Izuku then notices a kid standing kind of by the building, a scowl on his face. He then goes over to this little kid and crouches down. "Hey, kid, the name's Izuku Uzui," he explains before he's then interrupted by the kid who tries to punch him in the face. Before he can, a fist is caught by Izuku as he moves the fist kind of past him to the side. "Nice to meet you too," Izuku replies before walking away. The kid just kind of scowling. The rest of the night, the class relaxes as they eat food and have a soak in the hot pools. None of the pervy Mineta stuff happens since Mineta is in class 1B. And yeah. And if that did happen, Mineta would straight up die. Like, there would be nothing he could do. He would die. He would get sliced up into a million pieces and be sent to Jesus above. The class then the next day, the class then starts their training, them all doing their corresponding tasks to get stronger. President Mike approaches Izuku, explaining that he should try to increase the sound volume of his blood and the blood pumping around his body, so that he could use that to disrupt opponents in a more subtle way. Izuku tries this over a couple days until he finally gets the right frequency and pitch to disorient a person the same way, or kind of the same way, as his explosives were, just on a lower level. That night, the teachers announce that they will be doing a test of courage. Deku goes with Momo, her holding his arm the entire time, kind of freaking out, but also being kind of confident since she's with Izuku, who is a Chad, while Kendo and Kami go together, not really caring. While they're in the forest, Deku hears a strange sound. It's almost like the sound of fire and wood burning. He then smells some smoke and then sees fire in front of them. He then hears the sound of a child begging for help, and before he can move, he hears a splat at the top of the mountain. He then rushes to the top of the mountain as he sees blood across the ground, a mangled and shredded, headless body, kind of small body with tears and ribbons and just shreds of clothing on the cliff face, and the ground with a hulking figure holding a disfigured head of a child, bloodied and mangled and kinda crushed under the weight of the hand. Filled with rage, Izuku, knowing that he couldn't save the kid, rushes towards the villain, who doesn't have any time to react before his arm holding the head is cut off. Then his legs, as the man falls onto the floor hard, screaming in pain. Izuku then stomps on the villain's chest and stomach, knocking the wind out of him and breaking pretty much all of his ribs and a few of his organs, as he kicks the villain's mask off, and seeing that he only has one eye, decides to stab the other eye, blinding him, before chopping the other arm, chopping the other arm off and pushing him off the mountain. Izuku looks down the cliff to see the villain falling before he lands on a tree, getting a branch through the abdomen, stabbing straight through him, then falling over and over, getting impaled over and over, getting hit by tree. Pretty much every stick and trunk or branch that he could hit, he hits until he finally stops. A giant tree branch stabbing through his skull from the jaw straight up, penetrating through the top of his skull. Multiple branches and sticks lodged in his body as his body hangs there, limp and lifeless. As we move to the forest, we see Momo, Kami, and Kendo beating that everlasting crap out of Mustard. Kami uses an illusion to kind of confusing the guy before he's picked up and thrown by something grabbing his feet. He's not really sure. They felt like tiny little hands, but there's no one here that's small enough, as he feels it on both feet as he's launched, as they launching him into kendo before he's grabbed by two large hands by the arms and legs, then getting kind of stretched out and shot by a cannonball, blowing him apart. As the gas dissipates, we see Kami, Momo and Kendo kind of posing, not really sure, kind of just posing, JoJo style, as in front of them are two small, overly muscular rodents, posing, flexing, looking awesome. Izuku Uzui's muscle mice. Let's go! During this time, Deku then rushes down as he runs into Bakugo and Todoroki, then seeing a villain with blades as teeth. Before the man could react, his teeth are shattered and a cannonball slams into his back, breaking his spine. As he falls to the ground, the villain is grabbed by Izuku's muscle mice as his legs and teeth are ripped out. His legs ripped off of his kind of body, or ripped off of his body, and his teeth ripped out of his skull. Before his skull, they grab him by the top part of his mouth and the bottom of his jaw, ripping the top of his skull completely off of his head, leaving the jaw hanging there off of the villain's neck. Deku then hears something behind him, looking back to Bakugo and seeing him blast off towards the villain, who's flying and running away while the rest of the students chase after the both of them. After a few minutes of chasing, they see the two other villains as Bakugo goes in to explode one of them as a portal forms behind them. Them going through the portal, Bakugo not really being able to stop, following suit. The other villains then quickly making their exit as well. After this, the forest training camp is cut short as the students are sent home. However, Izuku, his wives and the muscle mice are brought into the police station for questioning. What in the world could cause you to chop a man's limbs off and throw him off of a cliff, watching him pretty much get impaled by a bunch of tree branches? And you three, what could cause you to blow a person in half with a cannonball and pretty much blow him apart? And you two, how the hang are you so muscular? Detective Tsukiyoshi questions, in which the students explain how Koda was killed and the other person was going to kill the students with his gas. So the entire thing was chalked up to self-defense. However, it had one condition. They would have to participate in the raid on the villain's hideout. A couple hours later, Bakugo is standing against a wall with multiple villains trying to kind of restrain him. Shigaraki is standing there with a nub wrapped in bandages where his hand used to be. That is until they hear someone at the door. Hello, pizza delivery. Before anyone could really react, the wall behind Bakugo explodes. I am here! With All Might bashing through the wall, a part of the roof then caving in, with Deku falling into the room, slicing Shigaraki's other hand off. And I am here to fulfill a promise, he states before cutting Shigaraki's head clean off. At this point, before anyone could really react, the entire building is blown apart, with All for One floating above the wreckage. All Might rushes at All for One as the two giants clash, while Izuku helps arrest the other villains. Within minutes, the villains are restrained and taken away to Tadaro's prison. All Might was still fighting All for One. However, All Might was still fighting All for One. However, All Might was losing ground. Izuku would rush in, blocking an attack for All Might. The two of them then take on All for One. Izuku getting in and out really quick, while All Might hit hard and brutalized All for One before landing one final strike, crushing All for One's skull, splattering it all over the ground, killing the centuries-old villain. A few weeks later, the class goes to the Provisional Hero license. However, since Deku already has his license due to his participation in the raid, he's mostly just a cheerleader for his class. 90% of the cheerleading going towards his 3 wives. Everyone finishes the exam with everyone except Bakugo and Shoto getting their license. A few days later, everyone is in class when they are greeted by some unfamiliar faces. The big 3 of UA. They are first greeted by Nijire, who asks 1,000 questions in a pretty much second. As she asks Shoto what's a scar, asks Shoji why is he wearing the mask, then being cut off by Mirio, who suggests a fight. They are then taken to one of the training gyms where the class prepares to fight. That is until the clothes fall off the 3rd year student, shocking the class. He's small, Izuku comments, as the rest of the class just stands there in shock, not really knowing what to do as they look towards Mirio, but she's gone. Suddenly, multiple of the students curl over in pain before a figure sinks back into the ground. Mirio then does this over and over again until it's just Deku and his wives left, in which Mirio tries to go for Kami but is blocked by Izuku, who can focus on the vibration of the ground, being able to hear when Mirio comes up from the ground. Izuku then throws a punch, hitting Mirio in the face right as he comes up. Mirio then fades back into the ground as Izuku has an idea. Once Mirio comes back up from the ground, Izuku throws another punch. Mirio, however, phases straight through it, and Deku smiles. Increasing his heartbeat sound, he channels it and discharges it inside of Mirio, causing him to have a seizure and collapse. After a few hours, Mirio wakes up and gives Deku a work-study offer at Sir Nightai's agency. Izuku, remembering that his father figure, Kaguya, said that he was related to Nightai, decides to take the offer. A couple of days later, Izuku is led by Mirio to the agency building, where they go up to Nightai's office, opening the door and seeing Nightai trapping Bubble Girl on a tickle machine, her being tortured by laughter. As Izuku's standing there not really sure what to say, Nightai looks over at them. "So, this is my little cousin," he comments, Izuku bowing his head. "Nice to meet you, Sir Nightai." After this, Izuku is given the day to be toured around the building and get familiar with everything. The next day, Izuku and Mirio are sent out on patrol, where Izuku hears something in an alleyway. To their left, he sees a little girl running towards them, her then slamming into Izuku, gripping him tightly. Izuku then crouches down to check on the girl and sees she's got bandages all over her body. Him asking if she's okay, her not answering. He then hears someone else in the alleyway before seeing a strange man with a bird mask covering his mouth. Izuku then turns to Mirio. "Is he a child molester?" He questions. "Yeah, he kinda looks like a child molester," Mirio replies, "No, but for real, that guy's Chizuki, Kai Chizuki, the guy we were looking for." Izuku then hears the man say something very quietly before he then passes the girl off to Mirio. "Get her out of here, okay?" he explains, Mirio just nodding as he dashes off. Izuku then rushes towards Overhaul without him being able to really react fast enough. Izuku then unsheaths his blades and slices Overhaul's hands clean off before cuffing him. Overhaul is then interrogated as his base is found and raided by several pro heroes and police. Eri is then adopted by Izuku and his 3 wives. After this, Izuku kind of cheers Eri up by taking him to the festival. Where the festival happens, Deku is part of the special kind of effects, using his explosions as effects, as Izuku declares that he is the Kami of festivals. After this, a few days pass as the 1A versus 1B fights begin, kind of weeks after, as Deku, it's not even a challenge, he destroys his opponent. And that is the end of this series. What If Deku was Tengen Uzui? Hope you guys did really enjoy this part. If you did, be sure to like, subscribe, all of that jazz. What else? All the links down in the description. Saint, the music, everything down in the description. Crown Fiend, the absolute Chad that he is, down in the description as well. Anyway, that's pretty much that. That's it from me. So I hope you guys do really enjoy this. And yeah, just remember, God is awesome. You guys are too. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.